Welcome to the game show episode of Third Song In. We had originally scheduled this to be the fourth episode of season 7, which is why the recommendations are for the year 2004. Tom and I decided to move this up a week, and we offer this episode as a tribute to Wink.
You're listening to Third Song In with Chris Derrickson and Tom Polachek. Welcome to the podcast.
Tom and I have been talking about doing this one for a really long time, mainly because when I was growing up, I felt like Bob Eubanks, Monty Hall, and Bob Barker were like my pseudo babysitters. I would come home from school every day and watch game shows. Like I would just seek out game shows and Price is Right, even the stupid Let's Make a Deal, and then the Bob Eubanks, the Newlywed Game were easily my favorites. But Tom and I are going to talk about the influence of game shows on our life, if there is such a thing, and what our favorite ones were.
I kind of was the same way because I always turned the TV on as soon as I got home from school. And I do remember Let's Make a Deal. And I do remember watching that stuff as well. I don't think I watched as much. I don't think it babysat me as much as it did you. I think I was being babysat by the Green Hornet and the old Batman 1966 Batman show. But I sure can remember all of those shows and what a big chunk of television programming game shows were back then. And I suppose they still are. It's just a different kind of game show.
Yeah, I'm not gonna remember the name of it, but I was home by myself and didn't feel like reading. It was a weekend, I think, or I don't know what it was, but I turned on the TV, and of course, on the front page of all of our streaming services now is like all the shows you used to watch. And is it the Beast? Is that the guy's name? Like the dude who's super rich and gives the money away?
Yeah, he's like a YouTube guy, right? Yeah, he's a social media dude. Yeah, my kids are mention him in passing. I don't really know what he does.
So he has a game show, I used air quotes, where it's like, I think it's 100 people. It might even be 1,000. I don't know. And they're all lined up on these platforms, and he just jumps right in the game. And he's like, all right, the first real game was if someone in your row doesn't volunteer to quit, the last 3 rows to have someone get eliminated. So it'd be like, 50 or so people. So all these people are pressuring everyone else to quit. Like have someone it's a social experiment more than it is a stupid ass game show, which to me is so perfect for our current state, of society. And because again, I love game shows at my heart. I can't not watch them, at least a good one. So I tried a current game show and it was one of the worst things I've ever seen. So I didn't even make it to the first episode.
Chances are most of the game shows that we watch were probably all rigged anyway. It feels like when you watch them now, it does feel like there were parts that were scripted. And I know that there was a giant scandal way before our time with a legitimate quiz show that was apparently really hard and was I don't remember what the prize was, but it was big money for back then. I think there was a movie about it, and that changed a lot of things about game shows. But I think it also opened the doors for things like Let's Make a Deal and Wheel of Fortune, which were more luck than they were talent or intelligence or anything like that. Because those are the games I remember are like Let's Make a Deal in particular with Monty Hall, Wheel of Fortune, which is still around, of course. Actually, both those shows are still around. Like Newlywed Game. Those are the ones I kind of remember. And they always seem to partially scripted, although Let's Make a Deal had a bunch of whack jobs on it. So probably hard to script that.
So just as a super quick post facto, this movie you're talking about was Quiz Show, starring Ralph Fiennes, John Turturro, and Rob Murrow. It was about the quiz show 21, which I don't remember at all, but I did actually watch the movie. I thought it was quite well done.
I remember it did well. I think it was fairly well received. I never saw the movie, but I did know what it was about. I can remember lots of interview shows and lots of people talking about it. And that's how I became aware that there was a scandal at all. I didn't know.
And I think Turturro was the scandal was they tried to make sure that certain contestants stayed on longer, so they fed them the questions, and it was based on attractiveness and likability. And if I recall, and I could be wrong, Turturro was the unlikable character who sort of brought all this stuff to light, and he's perfect for that character. It was a well done show, as I said. My least favorite game show of all time because of what they did. All the contestants seemed to feel they needed to do was press your luck, where they'd be like in the middle of the screen and the thing would be going around and they're like waiting to press like no whammy, no whammy, boom. And then they did it. I was just like, just shut up.
There's like a lot of stand-up comics. There was a point where no whammy was a punchline to stuff. And I can't say I really watched that show, but there wasn't anything to it, right? It seems like that was the
Yeah.
result of dumbing down all these game shows. There wasn't a whole lot involved in actually being successful.
No, and I don't remember his name. It's not his fault, but the even the host was like a parody of a host.
Is it?
He was a
I was good. Is the host that I always think of just because his name was ridiculous was Wink Martindale. Was that him?
I don't think it was Wink Martindale,
But he
but
hosted like five game shows at the same time. You see him on TV all day long.
he did. He had the greatest name.
Ugh,
Isn't there
at
like a
least,
football coach who has a similar name? Wink,
oh, I don't
defensive
know.
coordinator.
I don't know
Yeah,
another Wink ever. That's the only Wink I know. There was Wink Martindale. There's Bob Eubanks. He was a host of a million shows. Gosh, I'm trying to think because those were the stars of those shows. Were the hosts of them, right? And
yeah.
I it's funny. I didn't realize what a coveted job that was until Drew Carey replaced. Did he replace Monty Hall on Let's Make a Deal? Was that the show that or no, his Price is Right.
No, yeah, Bob Barker.
He replaced Bob Barker, and I was like, and when we were back in college, or maybe it was just after college, the Drew Carey Show was one of the funniest sitcoms on TV. I thought he was just hilarious, and he'd been a stand up, and you'd see him on Carson, you'd see him on the late night shows, and he was really really funny. And then I don't know, 10 years later, Bob Barker retired and it was a big deal who was going to replace him because he'd been the host of that show for probably 30 years or something. And when Drew Carey became the host, I thought, what the fuck is he doing? Why would he give up such a lucrative career as kind of an inventive comic? And what I didn't realize was just how much money those guys get paid and how easy the gig is. Because it turns out, I think that they record like 2 days a week. They record all the shows back to back to back to back, in 2 days. Let's get the rest of the week off, and they were making, millions of dollars. And I had no idea it was such a coveted slot to get until he became the host of I keep wanting to say Let's Make a Deal, but Price is Right.
All right, well, I want to actually blow your mind. So there was a Wink Martindale. His real name was Winston, hence the wink sort of
Ah,
makes sense.
sure, sure.
He was best known for hosting Gambit, which was on in the 70s,
I
and
remember
then
that.
Tic Tac Doe, which I do remember, and then High Rollers, which I don't, and then a show called Debt. However, the defensive coordinator from Michigan, and I'm not sure where he is now, because I think the Bengals briefly considered bringing him in as D coordinator. His name is Don Martindale, but he goes by Wink Martindale.
Oh, and so that's just a reference to the game show host,
Yeah,
right?
yeah, yeah. So even more
That's funny.
validity to the influence of Wink Martindale as a cultural figure.
Yes, there you go. And I remember those game shows you listed. I knew the first three. I don't know the show Debt, but I remember, and I think at least two of those shows were on at the same time. Like he was doing different game shows, like at the same time. He must have just been going from one studio to the next. And again, that's probably when you make a lot of money, and you were still probably only recording a few days a week.
You got me thinking, like, so back in the day, it was when they first started, I think it was quizzes. So to highlight your intellect and your ability to answer, somewhat difficult questions. And then after the scandal or thereabouts, it became much more about luck and entertainment. And then I guess we got kind of bored with that because then we ramped up to the Who Wants to Be a Millionaire,
Yeah.
which was millions of dollars, obviously. But now we've taken it to the other level, which is like putting your body at risk. And you're like, so you have like Survivor, Even sort of the great, what's that other one called where I should know it. All the pairs, the teams of twos go
Oh,
somewhere in the
the
world.
Great Race, is that what it is?
Yeah, something like the Amazing Race.
Amazing Race.
But then the best of all them is Wipeout, where people
I have seen an episode or two of that.
just watching the people get pummeled by the obstacles. It's so dumb, but I can't help but laugh like hysterically. I could watch that probably for an hour straight of just people getting pummeled by the various obstacles on that course.
Yeah, because that was like a summer show, right? Like a summer replacement type of show. And I remember watching the first one and thinking it was stupid, but also not tearing myself away because people get hit by a giant boxing glove and knocked into, shaving cream or whatever the hell it was they were doing. But then there were a bunch of copycats of that.
Right.
I don't have much information about game shows, but I think those shows and a lot of the game shows that have been around recently seem to be based upon game shows from other countries, particularly from Asia, like those
Yeah.
Wipeout type of game shows. I think the ones where you embarrass the contestants really started in Korea or China. I'm not sure exactly where. Maybe Japan, probably Japan. Actually, now that I think about it, but I think we just kind of stole those ideas or morphed them a little bit into other things. Those are the shows I can't watch very much. Like I laughed at Wipeout and it was like an obstacle course. So it felt like you might be able to succeed if you were agile enough and smart enough to figure out what was going on. But a lot of those embarrassment shows they make me cringe too much. I just can't watch that kind of show.
So you got the cringe, and then you have the gag, the fear factor.
Yes.
So
Yeah.
the Rogan show, where now in his defense, and I won't defend him much, he did say that he hated that show and he was high the whole time he filmed it. I thought I heard that
That
somewhere.
makes sense. Yeah, that's probably true.
But that one just I would watch though because some of the stunts or whatever obstacles were challenging. Others were just gross, like eating bugs and
Yeah,
other
I couldn't
stuff.
watch that one. I could not watch it. Technically, Survivor. You mentioned Survivor. Survivor is a game show for sure. There's a winner at the end, and that's a really funny evolution for me personally, because I watched the first season of Survivor, and I really got into it. Like I thought it was really interesting. I really thought it was, and again, I think that was a ripoff of another show, like a show in England or something like that. But I really enjoyed it. They came out with a second season very quickly. Those seasons for those shows aren't necessarily once a year. There might be a couple of them in a year. I watched the first one, I watched the second one, and then I started to watch the third one. And as opposed to the first season in particular, I really felt that it just rewarded such awful behavior. And it became clear that the networks wanted, they knew that people wanted to watch people treat other people just poorly, just really shitty. And after season two and maybe one episode of season three, I stopped watching Survivor and I've never watched a reality game show since then. Even the
Hmm.
ones that are probably a little more legitimate and don't promote such awful human behavior, like the music ones and the dance ones. I mean, those are people really trying. But I just hate the way they're packaged and the little video vignettes are they're just so manufactured and I just can't watch them. So I don't watch The Apprentice. Well, I'm sorry, I was looking at the outline. The Apprentice was the beginning of the end of the world as far as I'm concerned. But I don't watch like the shows that are on now, like The Voice and America's Got Talent, and So You Think You Can Dance. Everybody I know watches one of those shows, if not more of them, and really loves them. And I know that they've created people, particularly the singing shows, have created careers for people who deserve careers, who are really talented singers. But I can't watch the show. There are people I listen to now that shocks me that that were contestants on those shows.
Yeah.
But and that all kind of led around, and I let the cat out of the bag. But The Apprentice, I never watched. I didn't see 5 minutes of The Apprentice because I thought he was an asshole, and I thought it was a ridiculous, awful show from the very beginning, just from the commercials. And unfortunately, it was a platform for a guy who was pretty soon going to be bankrupt and out of everybody's lives, and he managed to make millions of dollars off a TV show where he pretended to be a successful businessman. And that was everything. That's how he stayed in the eye of the country. And now,
Yeah.
we're looking at a second presidential term.
Tyranny?
But
Sorry.
I never watched. Yeah, nightmare. Uh, but I don't watch any of those shows. I just can't bring myself to watch them because I just feel like, again, they're not scripted, but they're manipulated, and it just shows the worst of people on TV, and we get enough of that, I guess. So that's current game shows I just can't handle.
And even though I couldn't remember the name of it, the only one that I've watched recently, I've never seen a minute of Survivor. Years ago, I watched an episode or two of American Idol. I haven't watched any
That's
of
the other one.
the current one with the voice. I haven't watched any of those. But I have watched a season or two of The Amazing Race, and where I differentiate is I will watch when they don't have contestants who are like total assholes. Like,
Right.
because they always want to have the good guys against the bad guys, and then usually they keep the freaking bad guys in it long enough to keep it entertaining, I feel like. So
Yeah.
that's when I start worrying that the show is scripted and
Yep.
just won't watch it. So if it's generally a group that's likable enough, I'll watch it because there's some cool stuff that they have to do. And I always wonder, could I do that? And it's in
hmm
other countries, so you get to see some pretty cool sights. But
Huh.
otherwise, I know I don't take it too seriously, but it's kind of when I don't need my brain to work, I'll turn on The Amazing Race and just watch it.
Well, the only thing I know about The Amazing Race is that it's had some contestants that are they're successful artists in other fields that is kind of interesting to me because they became contestants after they already had a career in another field. Robbie Fulks was in that show, I believe, with
Really?
his son. Yeah, he's got a son. He had a kid when he was really young, like when he was 18 or 19 or something like that. And I don't remember the details of it. I just remember reading it somewhere that he was on that show for some period of time in one of the earlier seasons. And the director and writer, Mike White, the guy who created White Lotus, he also wrote the script and was in School
Yeah,
of
which one? I
Rock.
mean, yeah.
So Mike White wrote that, and he created White Lotus, and apparently, and I just read an article about him in the New Yorker just a while ago, and apparently he was a contestant, I think, on The Amazing Race, but definitely on one of those shows where they do seem to kind of elevate things a little bit more. It's not just tons of segments of people sitting in a room talking to a camera and dissing other people that they're competing with for stuff.
Yes, and actually, I'm gonna forget his name. No, I'm not. I remember it now. That triggered Rex Ryan was on with a friend, I think, the former head
Yeah,
coach of the Jets.
really.
Um, he was in the unlikable group for
Yeah,
me, so he got he
shocker.
got he got eliminated pretty quick.
I'd
Yeah.
like to see. I wish that sometimes I watch the ESPN shows and I'm like, well, can't they eliminate him? Can't they vote him off of the studio? The only other thing that's funny to me about game shows, at least in our country, is that we reboot game shows a lot, or at least recently have rebooted. So some of them just last forever and change hosts, like Let's Make a Deal and Price is Right. But what I've noticed recently is that there are some classic game shows that seem to be coming back. And I don't, again, because I don't really watch them much. I don't have much to say about them. But I don't know if you watch any of the new ones that aren't necessarily new, but just old stuff rebooted.
I've not. I mean, I've watched an episode or a few minutes of the new Price is Right. He's a fine host, and I know that Bob Barker had some less than perfect behavior as it's behind the scenes with all the models apparently. But I loved Bob Barker as a host. I thought he was pretty funny.
I know, and this one is definitely kind of scripted and not. It's not really a game. It's certainly not a game of skill. It's more for the comedic effect. But I know Hollywood Squares gets rebooted. It seems like every couple of years, and I think there's a new version of that has come out recently. But like I think the dating game got rebooted not too long ago, and then even the silly ones like Press Your Luck, I believe. They show up, and it seems like a lot of times they show up in the summer And maybe it's less so now because there's not the same kind of fall new shows, summer repeat type of cycle that we used to have when we were kids. But still, you see a lot of those rebooted game shows that will come up in the summer. And for me, it's just yet another reason not to watch TV in the summer. Just go outside.
Yeah. And to me, the one that I recall being rebooted because the host kept changing was Family Feud. Back to Richard Dawson, who had some relatively cringy behavior in hindsight about how he kissed all the women. He was replaced after he, I assume, retired by a gentleman named Ray Combs, who is from my hometown, right next to it, Hamilton, Ohio. He was on the show as the host for 6 years, and then I don't know the details, but I believe he took his own life. Richard Dawson came back for a year or two, and then there were multiples. Like Louis Anderson was on there for a while, the
Oh
comic,
yeah,
and then yeah, and then the current host, who's been there on there now for probably longer than anyone, is Steve Harvey. He's great. He has some really funny reactions, and I mean, he's obviously a stand-up, so he's funny
right.
as it is. But I think he's worth watching. I mean, I don't watch game shows the way I used to. I guess I don't need a babysitter anymore. Um, but but I do enjoy watching an episode or two with Steve Harvey on there.
That's funny. Yeah, I caught a couple minutes of the Steve Harvey version of the show, and I remember watching it when I was a kid and thinking it was kind of challenging. And either maybe I was just dumb as a kid, but now it just seems so stupid. It just seems so dumb when you watch it, and the people seem dumber. I'm like, why would you say those things? Which, of course, is the whole point. So that's why I wonder how much of it is a setup. You know what I mean?
Yeah. But I think you could argue that people are dumber. I don't know, just in
Yes,
general.
it does feel that way. I will say that.
All right, so that's our intro to game shows, which is going to take us to a new segment we started this season, which is a draft. And Tom and I are going to draft game shows. We will post the results to the website and hope that folks will vote on who had the best draft, who has the best collection of game shows. Tom is going to flip a coin. I am going to call heads this time.
Well, hold on, I lost the coin.
The draft is canceled.
We can't do a draft. I lost a penny. Heads it is. Heads it is.
All
So
right.
you win our game show. That's our game show is we just flip a coin.
I win.
You win. There
Oh, I
you
got
go.
to
Thanks,
choose
everybody.
something.
Yeah,
All right,
so
I'm
you
gonna go.
get
I'm gonna go first this time. Shut up.
got it.
I'm gonna
I'll
go
shut
first. Just be quiet. Wait your turn. I'm on the clock, and I'm going to take. This is not playing the game well because I should wait and take two in a row. But I'm going to take my favorite game show of all time, the Newlywed Game.
That game was again, that's
Stupid.
one that felt yeah, I was gonna say stupid, but also felt even back then, it felt like it might be set up.
Yeah.
But I will admit that there were some pretty funny answers to questions and pretty funny reactions between these couples when they would do it. And that's one that shows up. People will do versions of it just for the hell of it, like as a sketch or a skit or something like that. That I believe was Bob Eubanks, right? Wasn't he the host of the original Newlywed Game?
That was Bob Eubanks. And I do want to tell a quick story. I don't want to derail our draft, but in college, I don't remember what organization did it, but they hosted a game show night and they had a live, they asked real people, us, myself included, and the person I was dating at the time, Liz, went up on a version of the Newlywed Game. And they asked us questions just like they did. And Liz and I won.
Did you
And
really?
yeah. And I think I'll get to that results in a second. But I think that I don't think we ever got our prize, which was supposed to be a dinner out at some restaurant, and they never surfaced. So, but in perfectly fitting with the game shows of the past, we cheated because
That's awesome.
there was someone out in the audience. One of the questions I think was the most embarrassing thing that I do, and it was air guitar in front of the mirror, and someone in the audience, it was our friend, sat there. And people can't see, but they were doing this to Liz to tell her to, and she got the answer right. And then I think they said, "What was the most unattractive part of Liz's body?" or something like that, or your partner's body. And it's like question you can't answer.
Yeah,
So,
I'm sorry. Excuse me. I'm just going to leave now.
but Liz started stomping on my feet, and I was like, "Oh, her feet," and I got that one right too. So,
Nice,
so,
nice.
so I wouldn't tell that story because I'd be afraid they'd take away our title. But we never got the prize anyway, so fuck them.
Yeah, they still owe you a dinner. All
Yeah,
right. So based upon our Serpentine draft, I now have two picks to make, correct?
correct.
All right. So because I get to do two in a row, I am going to first draft the king of game shows, the only one that I think is legitimate in terms of an actual contest of intelligence and at least knowledge of trivia, and that is Jeopardy.
Yeah, that's a good one.
I wasn't a big Jeopardy fan. I can remember back when we were in school that when Jeopardy was on, there were about a half a dozen guys that would always collect in the TV room and shout answers at the screen. I wasn't one of those guys. I've never been in love with the show. I always, oh shoot, the host who passed away was Trebek, Alex Trebek.
Yes.
For whatever reason, he irritated me, and that may have been part of the reason I didn't watch the show. Ken Jennings is the current host, and he's been a guest on a bunch of podcasts that I listened to. He was I think, may still be the most successful contestant on that show, or at least in the top two. But he became the host. I think he's really funny. He's actually written some books that are pretty interesting. He's a really smart guy. But I think most people would probably agree that of any game show that's been on the air for the last 10 years, it probably is the most legitimate actual test of something as opposed to, being lucky or just being cringy or whatever it may be.
Yep.
And I'm going to go from there to the third pick of this draft is going to be, I would say, the opposite of that. And as I understand it, there's a new version, a rebooted version that's on TV now, but I'm going with the match game, which couldn't have been less of a test of intelligence. It was only a test of quips and funny lines and one-liners. And I believe it was entirely scripted. It feels like everything was set up so that somebody could deliver a punchline. But in the old days, it was hosted by Gene Rayburn. Do you remember that?
I do. Yeah.
And there was a panel, and I think it was a panel of six people, and mostly it was the same people. Three or four of them would be there all the time, and then they'd have a couple, somebody who was new for an episode. That's one of the game shows when I was a kid I did watch when I got home from school. And even though, frankly, a lot of the jokes were double entendres that I didn't get at the time, I still thought it was a really funny show. So for nostalgia's sake, my second pick, the third pick of the draft, is the match game.
Good choices. I'm gonna go with two in a row that I've already said were part of my growing up. So let's make a deal, which was one of the most ridiculous shows ever, like winning the donkeys or a car. I mean, it was but you usually won nothing. I mean, that was it was a great game show because they probably got all the ratings and gave away very little. But even the way that everyone dressed up so that they would catch his attention when they would call him up, and I'm sure they were all pre-screened, but they did a good job acting like they really wanted to be on the show. And then the one that I can't, and I'm going back to the Bob Barker episode. I'm going The Price is Right. Just so many different games that they would play, and then and just watching the people get so excited when they're on the front row and they'd bid on something. If they were closest, they'd get to play the next game. It was fun. I enjoyed that one the most just because I think it had the variety. And Bob Barker was funny. I know, as I said, he's probably had some moments that shouldn't be proud of, but as a game show, it was a great game show.
I will always respect Bob Barker for being in the scene in Happy Gilmore where he got in a fight with Adam Sandler's character on the green of a golf course. And at one point, as he's punching out Happy Gilmore, he says, "The price is wrong, bitch." That I will always remember.
It's a great reference. I forgot about that.
All right, so here's what I'm doing for my next two picks. I'm going back to two shows that I only watch sporadically, but I just liked kind of the aesthetic of the shows, and it definitely reflected it's a very specific period of time for us, so that even if you didn't watch the shows on MTV, you know exactly what they are, and you can kind of close your eyes and remember, VJs and music videos.
Oh yeah.
So I'm picking back to back. I'm picking two MTV shows. My sixth pick is Win Ben Stein's Money, which was a quiz show contest against Ben Stein, who was famous at that time for being the teacher on Ferris Bueller's Day Off, I think. It's the only reason I knew him anyway. But apparently, I think he was, I don't know what the hell he was, but he became famous. He was in that movie, but he became famous for this game show, which was hosted, at least initially, early on, by Jimmy Kimmel,
Huh.
who obviously went on to fame in his own late night talk show. But it was very funny. Jimmy Kimmel was very funny in the show. It was a relatively legitimate quiz show where you had to know more than Ben Stein, and very few people did. And then I think the twist was that he actually put up his own money. I think he was a famous like Wall Street guy initially, and then decided to get into acting or something. I don't know exactly what his story is, but I I watched that. I didn't watch it religiously, but I do think it was a funny show, and it definitely kind of reflected what MTV was like back then when they still showed music videos and it wasn't all reality shows. And then my next pick is another a similar, but I think probably dumber game show on MTV, which was Remote Control, which back then was hosted by Ken Ober, and Colin Quinn was in that show. And I don't know what his purpose was, but he was the guy who would just lob one-liners in. I remember when they would like in between questions and in between categories. So my picks for 6 and 7 are Win Ben Stein's Money and Remote Control, both from MTV, both from roughly the same time, and they were very entertaining, if not actually very challenging.
So wasn't Colin Quinn just Vanna White without any responsibilities? I mean,
Yeah, I literally don't think he did. He just sat, I feel like he just sat on a stool, and every once in a while the camera would go to him and he would just say something, Colin Quinn like. And he later on was on Saturday Night Live. I think he's a really funny guy. He's done some interesting stand-up in the last 10 years or so. He's done some shows that, made their way to streaming like on Netflix. I think he's a really funny dude, but yeah, there was no reason for him to be on that show as far as I can tell.
So I'm torn. I know which I have two more to take me to five. I'm for sure taking a very recent game show, and it's Chopped. It's on the Food Network. It's the chefs, three chefs, I think, come on, maybe four. Yeah, I guess it's four. And then they do a appetizer, main meal. I guess it's four. And then they finish with the dessert. They have a time limit. I love the show. I'm sure it's because I love game shows. It's mindless and there's some cool stuff. Like they kind of like they sit there, open a basket of usually three ingredients and have to make a dish out of it. And I can't cook to save my life, but I'm like, what the hell would I make? I'm like, peanut butter and jelly, just put those on the side. It's like, but it's fun to watch the creative process. Maybe I'm jealous that they can actually cook. So where I'm torn though is, do I pay tribute to Wink Martindale, or do I go with the cooler one, which was Cash Cab? I think I'm going to go with Wink Martindale. I'll let you take Cash Cab if you want. I didn't watch it enough to really. I've seen it. I know the concept. It's a cool concept, but Tic-Tac-Toe
I remember
was one. Yeah, I mean that was Wink Martindale. If you got a question right, you'd get to choose X or an O. It was dumb, but Wink Martindale was enjoyable to watch, and the contestants were dumb as as you would expect. So,
All right, I am not going to take Cash Cab, although I did have it on my long list. Like you, I didn't really watch it. The main thing I know about Cash Cab again is that whoever the host was, he's been on some podcasts that I listened to, and he seems like a really funny, smart guy. And I don't know if that show was his idea, like he created it and he's made a bunch of money off of it, or he was just the host. But I know he's an interesting dude, but I never really watched that show at all. So I decided not to put him on my top 5 list anyway to draft. I am picking another show, which is, again, only loosely a game show, but it's set up in the format of a game show, and that's At Midnight, which is not MTV, but feels like an MTV quiz show kind of thing. And the host was Chris Hardwick, who now hosts an actual primetime game show. I can't even think of the name of it. I've never seen it, but that seems to have become his thing. He's now a game show host. But at midnight was just an excuse for him to put three stand-up comics behind podiums and then ask them to riff or improv. It was kind of a comedy game show. And that part was pretty competitive because comics are like that, and they would try to say the funniest thing or fill out at the end of a joke with something funnier than the other guy. But the reason it wasn't really a game show is because he randomly assigned points to the answers of things that had nothing to do with whether they were good or bad or whatever it was. So he would just randomly pick a winner at the end of every show and say that person was the winner. But I like that show because it really wasn't a game show. It was just an excuse for stand-ups to improvise and do comedy. And I thought it was really funny. And I don't think it's on anymore. I think it got canceled a couple years back. But that one I thought technically not really a game show, but because I don't watch many game shows, I figured that would be my final pick. That's the 10th pick of this draft.
You do realize that we have so few rules that you could have picked anything you wanted.
Yeah, exactly. That's kind of why I went that way.
I do want to point out my closing remark on the draft and on our discussion of game shows. Neither of us chose Wheel of Fortune. So we've mentioned Vanna White. I never liked that show, and I'm almost certain it's because it became so freaking popular. I mean, it was just too much. I mean, Jeopardy became really, really popular for a variety of reasons, but it just seemed legit, and it was fun to see if you knew the answers to the questions. But there's some really dumb people on Wheel of Fortune. So, I mean, some of those phrases you should have been able to figure out way sooner.
Yes. Definitely. Although that, again, one of the longest running without a break, right? I mean, a lot of game shows have left and come back and what have you, but Wheel of Fortune is still on every night, as far as I know, or every weeknight.
Yep. And, same host, same Vanna.
Yeah, although not same host. I didn't their host. Didn't.
Oh no, did they change?
I think he passed away.
I take it back. Obviously, I don't watch.
Right. And there's no reason to watch it. I was the same way. I thought it was dumb. But yeah, because it has a new host now, and I'm not sure.
Okay.
Pat Sajak was the former host, and he's dead. Oh, yeah. You know who hosted now? Ryan Seacrest.
Oh, really?
Yes, he is the host. Like I said, people, those guys want to be game show hosts. It must be the easiest gig in the world because you see people fighting for those host slots.
Man, I should be fighting for a host slot.
Yeah.
If I could speak, I would possibly be a host. But since I can't just even say host slot without messing it up, I don't think I'm going to make it.
I thought you said host slut. I think we should move on. And with
I think host slut should become a new phrase for the show every episode. Instead of saying Skittles, we're going to say host slut.
Today I will be your host slut. It is time for us to make some recommendations, my friend.
Yes.
This season we are making recommendations each episode from a different year in the aughts. And we've decided to do it chronologically. So this is the 4th episode of season 7, which means we are making our recommendations from the year 2004. I'll
go first.
I suggest you go first.
All right. My choice for the 2004 recommendation is one of the best recommendations in the history of the world. I'm copying someone here. The history of the world. Greatest of all time. Dodgeball. The only person I don't really know all that well is the director. It is directed by Rawson Marshall Thurber. You may know him. I don't. I looked him up. I really only saw a reference to this movie. But man, he knocked it out of the park with his first or most important directing gig. Starring Ben Stiller, Christine Taylor, and Vince Vaughn, and a whole host of other great actors and actresses. Just a great, great movie. My favorite parts, it's so funny. My favorite part is a cameo by Rip Torn, where he comes in to be the coach of Vince Vaughn's gym the gym that he owns. It forms a ragtag team to compete in a dodgeball contest to save the gym with the prize money. Rip Torn comes in to coach them because they don't know a damn thing about dodgeball. And one of the best lines is, if you can dodge a wrench, you can dodge a ball. And Rip Torn starts throwing wrenches at them. And of course, there's a couple slapstick shots where people get hit in the face, and then he takes them into traffic. If you can dodge a car, you can dodge a ball. And then a couple guys getting hit by cars. But as silly as it sounds, Rip Torn is fantastic in it. I don't even know who my favorite character. Vince Vaughn is the hero of it, but Ben Stiller is so good as a bad guy. And it's just an entertaining, silly. We talked about how silly game shows are. This movie is as silly, if not more. But I've probably watched it about 10 times and could watch it another 10 times without getting sick of it. It's a fun movie. I think it's the peak of Ben Stiller's career. That's what I'm going with. Plus, he met his
Yeah.
wife there. She's hot.
Yes, she is. Yeah, I agree with you. I love that movie. I'm surprised. I thought he directed that movie, actually. I didn't realize he didn't direct it. And my guess is he had a huge hand in all
Yeah.
of that. You already said the most famous and probably the funniest line, certainly the most memorable line in the movie. But I love that film. I really do. Maybe my personal favorite line, only because it's a little more hidden in the film, is at some point Ben Stiller's real life wife slaps Ben Stiller at her front door, and they show her slapping him, and then they cut to him, and he's got some blood coming off his lip, and he touches his lip, and he looks at the blood, and he goes, "No one makes me bleed my own blood." And then he snaps his fingers, and his big henchman comes up on a little scooter and pulls up behind him like immediately. Oh, I fucking love that scene so much. I can't tell you how many times I've said, "No one makes me bleed my own blood." I love that movie. That's a great choice for your 2004 recommendation. My recommendation for 2004 is both a film and a TV series. The TV series premiered in 2004, which is why I am selecting it as my recommendation. And the show is Veronica Mars. Now, it's not an unknown by any means, and it was a very popular show for a short period of time. But it lasted from 2004 to 2007, and then they did a film in 2014 with the same characters being roughly 7 years older. And then they followed up the film with a fourth season, which came out, I believe, in 2019. Now, I did not watch the show when it came out in 2004, and I didn't ever watch it while it was in its original run. When the film came out, I saw some advertising about it, and I'd always heard, it became kind of a cult hit as much as anything else, because it was only, 3 seasons initially. And I'd heard really good things about it, but I never watched it until the film came out. And the reason I started to watch it was because between 2007 and 2014, I basically fell in love with Kristen Bell. I think she is gorgeous. I also think she's really funny. I think she's such a great actress and so good at portraying people with real, with quirks, and with, they're not perfect. And she does just a really, really good job in that role. And she's been in a couple series that weren't Veronica Mars that I just love. There's one called The Good Place, which I recommended seasons and seasons ago. One of my favorite sitcoms, actually. But because of that, and because I had secretly fallen in love with Kristen Bell, I decided to watch Veronica Mars, the original series, before I watched the film. So I binge watched all 3 seasons and really, really liked it. They're very, very young. They're practically high school age at the beginning of it. But then the film and the following season, in season 4, was just as good, maybe even better. And I really enjoyed it. So my recommendation for 2004 is a television series that started in 2004, lasted for 3 years, took a break until 2014, and then the 4th season came out actually 5 years after that, in 2019. So it's a very long 2004 recommendation, but I would watch anything that has to do with Veronica Mars.
That's a great recommendation.
Did you watch it when it originally came out?
No, I started
Yeah.
streaming it a couple months ago. I think I've watched solidly through most of season three. I've not made it to the skip where they got to season four. But
I'm
I would watch anything that Kristen Bell is in. She's a great, she's
exactly.
awesome.
I can't get enough of her. I like her commercials.
Yeah.
Like I like the commercials she does with her husband. I just first of all, she's gorgeous and is just as beautiful now as she was, when she was what, like 20 or something in 2004. But I just think she's hilarious. I think she does a great job of playing flawed characters. And the Veronica Mars character, I think, is flawed in many ways. And as I said, earlier, I think she's unbelievable in The Good Place.
Yeah, and there's just something like, yes, I totally agree. She's gorgeous, but there's another quality about her that she's so real.
Yeah.
It makes her that much more attractive to me because
Yeah,
nice show.
if you ever hear her husband's an actor,
Yeah.
and if you ever hear him talk about her and tell stories about her, she sounds just as cool in real life as the characters that she ends up playing. So anyway,
Yeah, I like him. Was he in his big thing was Parenthood, right? The
he was
TV
in
show?
Parenthood. He was also I just rewatched Idiocracy because it
Oh
seemed
yeah,
fitting, and he was in Idiocracy, and yeah, he's been in a couple other TV shows and movies. I think he's also a pretty talented dude, but his main claim to fame is that he managed to marry Kristen Bell.
nice job on your recommendation. I like it. Mine was
You as
awesome
well.
too.
Yes, it
Yeah,
was.
I know. So that'll take us to post facto.
It's a mistake. It's a mistake.
Yeah, so
Post,
post
oh
facto
yeah.
is usually our opportunity to correct mistakes or at least fill stuff out or provide information we were unable to come up with because of our failing memories in earlier episodes. I have to admit that I still don't have the answer to a question I posed last episode, which actually I think you posed, which was what was the Irish bar that was on the landing near Spaghetti Factory where we used to work? I went to my expert, my wife. She could not remember. She didn't remember that bar at all. I can't. I tried to get on Google. I just could not find the name of that place. And I'm putting out the call to listeners. This worked before when we couldn't remember the name of Jimmy's on Delmar way back in the 80s. If you can remember the name of the Irish bar that was on the landing, it wasn't a big place, I don't think. It was kind of tucked in an alley almost. Please email us or send us a message on Facebook or otherwise or on the site. Please tell us what the name of the bar is because I can't find it anywhere. I did kind of mention in passing another industry bar that we would go to sometimes when we were done working, a closing shift at Spaghetti Factory, and that was a bar that was next to Union Station and is still there, and that's Maggie O'Brien's. Maggie O'Brien's is still there. I believe it still has a 3 a.m. license, which is why we would go there after our restaurant shifts or our bar shifts. That was one of the two places we would go to. So I'm only bringing that up because I was able to find that information. I was unable to figure out what the name of the other bar was. You owe us a post facto from last episode, dude. How'd that go?
I do because we changed our schedule. I promised that I would finish the book The Buffalo Hunter, which is about a Native American vampire who is confessing his sins to a priest back in the year 1912. I wasn't expecting that we'd be recording 2 days later, so yeah, I didn't finish that book yet.
Huh.
Yeah, I actually read I think I'm at around 18 or 19%. I was at 4% when I made the recommendation. So shows that I'm willing to go out on the limb and recommend something I know nothing about.
Fair enough. So you still owe us a post facto, maybe next
I
episode.
do.
I think we have a little gap in recording, so there should be some time. I'm curious to see what you think about
Yeah, if I don't have it by the next episode, unless you schedule one for tomorrow,
it.
I will do something embarrassing.
Excellent. Excellent. Something else embarrassing.
Yeah, something else embarrassing.
Our next segment
Yep.
is staff picks.
Just around the corner from you.
We like to make a recommendation of something, generally something that's either brand new or coming out soon, although sometimes we'll reach back to something we think people just don't know about. This episode, I think we both have new stuff to recommend. What do you got?
We do. And I don't want this to seem as a qualified recommendation, but 2 days ago when we recorded the episode prior, I said I really struggled to find something new to recommend. So I went with something else. I don't know what it was. It was 2 episodes ago, 2 days ago.
It was only 2 days ago.
But I went ahead and listened a couple times to a new album by an artist that I like quite a bit. The artist is Giovanni and the Hired Guns, who sings one of my favorite songs of all time. If I ever want to just get riled up and wound up, Ramon Ayala is a great, great song. He just put out a new album called Quitter, and what distinguishes him, or I think what draws me to him, is his voice. I don't know that I love the band doesn't they're a fine band, but everything about him is his voice, his delivery of the lyrics. Ramon Ayala just has some great changes of paces with his voice. There's a couple really good songs on the album. I didn't like it as much as I did the last album, but I still think that he is such a great presence. I would imagine he's awesome in concerts. But Ramon Ayala and the Hired Guns, their new album, Quitter. If you wait 1 second.
I'm going to stop you for a second and say
Yeah.
Giovanni. And
What did I say?
Ramon
What did I
Ayala.
say?
Ramon Ayala.
Oops. Well, he says he drinks Ramon Ayala all the time, so I think that counts. All right,
Sure.
let's start over. Hold on.
No, we're not starting over. We're going to keep plugging away. Because here's another thing I want to point out. The staff pick you couldn't remember that you made
Yeah.
was
it the book?
the Buffalo Hunter. Yes, it was the book you were literally just talking about. So I think I'd like listeners to check in with us and let us know if you think we should record 2 episodes in a week, or maybe we should take a longer break between episode recordings.
Yeah. All right. So Giovanni and the Hired Guns. My favorite song right now, they released it as a single, is Chiquita. It's just a really great, fun album in general, mostly because of Giovanni's voice. Maybe because he drank a lot of Ramon Ayala. I don't know.
My staff pick for this episode is a television show, a Netflix show that dropped 2 weeks ago. So it's still relatively new. And actually, I got to start again.
No, we're not starting again, you fucker.
You forget who edits, though, don't you? My staff pick for this episode is a Disney Plus streaming show that was formerly a Netflix streaming show. It is the show Daredevil, Born Again. I was a big fan of pretty much all of the Netflix Marvel shows that came out. They're all superhero shows. But I think by acclaim, Daredevil was the best of them. I think most critics, most fans, most comic book fans felt that the Daredevil show on Netflix was the closest to the comic book, and just was really, really well done. It was really well cast. The guy who plays Daredevil is fantastic. He ended up showing up in one of the Spider-Man films, and there's hope that he may end up in the MCU at some point. But Disney, of course, basically when the merger acquisition between Marvel and Disney took place, so Disney now has all of those shows, and of all of the Netflix Marvel shows, this is the only one so far that they've kind of rebooted. And the good news is they didn't reboot it in the sense of changing much about it. It's the same cast. It's the same main cast anyway. The first couple episodes debuted and dropped about 2 weeks ago. Just this past week, another 2 episodes dropped. And I think 5 total are out at this point. And it is awesome. If you love Marvel Comics, if you love the MCU, and particularly if you like the original Daredevil Netflix show, it's really good. I watch it with my son, Tommy. He and I are the comic book heads in the family. And the first episode felt like it could go either way. And we both kind of looked at each other and said, all right, it's nice to have him back, but it wasn't great. And every episode since then has gotten better and better, and just frankly, a little more violent and a little darker, which was what was great about the Netflix show. So I highly recommend watching Daredevil Born Again on Disney Plus. I think it's halfway through right now. By the time this drops, there'll probably be another couple episodes that will have dropped. So it'll probably be up to around 6 or 7 by the time you listen to this. It is, again, if you like superhero stuff and if you like the source material, there was a run on Daredevil, the comics called Born Again. It is pretty dark, and it is, the effects are really cool and the fight scenes are really cool. And it's definitely worth seeing. One guy that shows up that I think is supposed to show up again later is the Punisher, who not only was in the original Daredevil series, but also ended up having his own Netflix series. That actor is fantastic, and it looks like that's going to be a really cool clash a little later, by the end of the series. And that's the nice thing is they kept these really well-cast people from the Netflix show and just decided to do another story, which is what I think everybody was hoping for.
That takes us to the core of Third Song In, which is our playlist. Tom and I recommend a song each on every episode. We put those songs on a running playlist. Since this is the 4th episode, this will be the 7th and 8th song that we add to the playlist. Our choices should generally align with the theme of the show, but again, we have very few, if any, rules. So let's see what we came up with, Tom.
All right, my pick for the playlist this episode is the song Game Theory from the album Game Theory by The Roots. Came out in 2006. I'm a big fan of The Roots. Really like this song. And clearly it fits the theme, if only because I used the word game. So I really went deep. Twice.
Yeah. Yeah, this is kind of typical Tom, Chris deviation. You went with the obvious, the title. I had to dig into the lyrics.
Yeah.
But I did go with one of the most popular songs that I've ever recommended in my life.
I was shocked to see the artist you recommended.
I'm feeling a little dirty because of it. I feel like I cheated on a game show or something. I went with Can't Hold Us from Macklemore and Ryan Lewis's fantastic album, The Heist. It's probably the only song I've listened to off that album. But they do mention specifically Bob Barker's Suit Game and Plinko. And Plinko is one of my favorites. It's one of my favorite words. It was one of my favorite games. And watching the people go to the top of that stand and ding, 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 ding. And then it's falling into how much money or whatever they would win. I forget the results. But it's a fun song. I can't argue with that. I haven't listened to it in years, and then I listened to it multiple times last night, hoping it would inspire me to find something else, but it didn't. It'll be a good addition to the playlist, though. People might actually like a song that I chose for the playlist.
That's a fun song. My kids loved that song when it came out because it came out in 2012, and the boys were 6, so it was right up their alley. Even Anna liked it, and I can't believe you picked it.
Hey, Google helped me search the lyrics. It wasn't like I went through all the lyrics, but
yeah, that's funny though. That's a good call.
So that takes us to the end of the game show episode. Third Song In is recorded in Chapel Hill, North Carolina, and Joliet, Illinois.
You can email us at thirdsongin@gmail.com. Please do so. Let us know what you think of this episode. If you have any suggestions or any game shows you'd like us to talk about in post facto. Also, please follow us wherever you listen to your podcast. Rate and review us. Give us all your goddamn stars.
You can also check out our website, thirdsonginpodcast.com. From the front page, you can see the last couple episodes and listen to them directly from the website. There's also a link to our blog. You've been listening to Third Song In with Chris Derrickson and Tom Polachek. Thanks for listening. And whammies, no whammies.
All right. Well, that was, I don't know, weak.
So that we could dedicate the episode to fucking someone who can talk. So as a tribute to Wink, welcome. Blah, blah, blah. Fuck me. God, I hate this shit. Whammies, no whammies.